Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the In the 11 podcast. I'm your host, Brendan Griffiths, and this is the show where we bring on those from the world of football to show you what it takes to be in the 11 at the highest possible level. This week's guest, it's cool. It's cool to have a fellow Capital Regioner on the podcast, and we talk about it a little bit in the episode, but it was always something that I felt like. For me growing up, I didn't have, tons of players from this area kind of going on to do huge things in soccer. And so when it was something that you didn't see very often, sometimes I felt as if I made it out to be like it was never something that I could achieve, right? Because I didn't have those role models or those trailblazers in front of me to kind of set the stage, if you will. But so it's so cool to see somebody who grew up in that same kind of community, that same environment that I did, and, didn't let that stop her. And the amazing thing that she has achieved so far in her career, which we, discuss in the coming episode. It's cool. It's always cool to see somebody kind of from your neck of the woods doing cool things. So as I mentioned there at the end of the episode as well, we are definitely supporting her as a Capital Region soccer community, and it will be exciting to see where we see her play next. Meghan Cavanaugh is in the 11, the Shen graduate, UAlbany player, just coming off a Champions League season with Vlasnia, where she played against some of the giants in European football. So I can't wait to share this story with all of you. And I think you'll really learn a lot from Meghan's story and from her career thus far. Last, before I go, as I have the past few episodes, patreon.com/in11pod. Get access to the episodes a day before anybody else does. So if you love the show, that's perfect for you. It also helps support the show a little bit as well, which we always appreciate and allows us to put out even more content for all of you guys out there. So thank you so much. Here's myself and Megan. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stepping into the 11 now for this week and joining us is, as I mentioned before, what I've just come to now learn is a fierce and bitter rival of mine now. And not many people probably out there are going to know the inner workings of upstate New York soccer, but I went to a high school called Niskayuna High School. My guest, Meghan Cavanaugh here, is a Shen plainsman. So we were rivals all growing up, and our schools do not like each other very much. But I am super happy to have her here to hear her story about her football career, her soccer journey, and thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So talk to me a little bit then about, because I know some of this, but maybe the people don't as much. Like, what's it like kind of growing up in the Capital Region of New York, playing soccer? When did you fall in love with the game, and kind of what did it mean to you as a young player?
So when I was younger, I think honestly a lot of parents in the Capital District up there kind of put their kids just in rec soccer just to, go burn some energy. So of course I was out there doing that at the age of 4 and stuff. And although my brother was off kind of picking dandelions and hated every single second of it, I kind of liked it and I liked competing. So then I kind of just stuck with it, and I went up through the program of Clifton Park Soccer, playing at the Clifton Commons, for anybody that knows that. And my dad was my coach for a lot of it, which I owe like a lot of like the success and like the player that I am today to him, because he was just, anytime I asked him to kick a ball around, whether it was in the backyard, in the garage, anywhere, like he was always down to help me, down to critique me. And I just really loved having a ball at my feet, whether I was watching TV or not. So it was just growing up in New York. Of course, it was hard with the snow and everything, but the indoor facilities were great. So it was fun, of course, growing up in New York.
Yeah. So what's that like having, as I'm sure you just mentioned there, it has its bonuses having your dad as a coach, but I'm sure it also can maybe have some difficulties. I can even reminisce kind of in my times when I've had parents as coaches. It's like, it sometimes has some off the field friction as well. Did that ever come about, or was it all just kind of a positive coach player relationship?
Oh no, we for sure butt heads. I think what helps us a lot even to this day is that we have a nice like mutual respect for each other though, because even to this day, he still plays indoor soccer with his buddies and everything. So if he has something to say to me, like he just has to know, like, I don't know, you also have to know when to say things to each other.
Yeah.
Like if I am really not playing well, I don't want you to sit in the car next to me and be like, hey, you really didn't play well. It's like, I know.
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely went at it, but of course it was all very short lived bickering back and forth. So
Yeah. So I'm always curious about this as well. Like for you, was this kind of something, as you mentioned, you loved kicking the ball all the time. But when did it kind of resonate in your mind, like the things that you're doing now, right? Going on to Division I college and then playing professionally, like when did those sort of become dreams that you had up there as goals that you wanted to attain?
so in middle school, I would say probably in about seventh or eighth grade, I really wanted to make varsity because only like a couple other eighth graders had made varsity, and unfortunately, I didn't make it. But around those years is when I realized I really wanted to be better and I wanted to like make the most out of my athletic career. And actually, Abby Wambach came to the indoor facility that I had been training at like my whole life, and seeing somebody that I had watched on TV so many times speak about her journey and her obstacles, I was like, wow, this is something I really want to do. And I would really love, like, as my role model talking to me right now, like, I would really love to have a career anywhere similar to hers. Of course, she is amazing. So,
Hmm. Yeah. Because I always kind of speak to this, and I wonder if you can, just because of the kind of community that we grew up in. Like I always, like we were talking about before, how there was like certain players who, when they rose to a certain level, they kind of became like household names, like around the whole area, right? Like all the
mhm,
best players, they kind of became these players that everyone talked about. And it never seemed that common for players really in any sport to like go on to the professional level. And it was
mhm,
kind of always this like rare thing. And so I almost felt like, me growing up, I looked at it like, oh, it's such a, you have to be completely different, right? You have to be this
right.
complete different level of athlete to get to the pro level. And maybe that kind of hindered me a little bit growing up. And but it sounds like for you, like once you kind of had that inspiration and that work ethic and also the love of the game, it was like, no, it doesn't really matter that not a lot of people from this area do it. Like if I put my mind to it, I can do it. Is that probably fair to say?
Yeah, I still think a part of me does believe, just like what you were saying, like those top level athletes like Abby Wambach, Mia Hamm, like those were my role models growing up. And even nowadays, like Sam Kerr, like I still think a part of me does believe that she is different than I am, and like my development was different than hers. Whether growing up she was more competitive, whether she had different resources, whatever it was, but I do kind of think that in a way she is somehow built different than me, has a different mindset than me, because she, like, these athletes are at the very very top level. So it definitely takes a certain characteristic, like you were saying, like work ethic and mindset and everything growing up.
Yeah. As you've started to now play against like some of those players, right? Like, you, as we mentioned, Sam Kerr there, like when you faced against her in the Champions League, like, do you start to pick up on any of those things that you maybe kind of thought going into it? Or do you notice anything that's like, wow, that seems different than kind of any player I've ever really seen before?
There were a few things on the field that I did like that they were doing as like a collective group that I wanted to bring to my game. Like, for instance, Sam Kerr is so sneaky when it comes to center backs. Like the way that she shifts her body into going behind center backs. And all of their runs, like all of the forwards runs, were at 100% speed. Like
Mm,
the change in pace when they decided to make a run into the box was so dangerous because it was always all out. Like there was never a I should make that run, so I'm gonna go at this speed. It was like, no, like I'm going. So I really liked that. And in the Real Madrid games, I really liked how all their midfielders were able to turn out of almost any situation that they were in. Like
hmm
their awareness on the field was something that I would really like to bring more to my game, like checking my shoulders and all that. So yeah, there's definitely some characteristics that they have that I was like, you guys are just phenomenal.
Yeah. And where does kind of the balance fall between like where you do admire players and you can maybe take things from their game and try and add it into yours, but also like kind of once you step over those white lines, like you're just my opponent and
Mhm.
like we're equals in this moment here. Like and I'm trying to beat you, you're trying to beat me, and
Right.
it's the same as when I was at UAlbany, it's the same as when I was playing in Clifton Park, right? Like the stage may be bigger, but the game is still
Right.
kind of the same, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely you can't really be fangirling over them when they're your competition. And of course, it's a level of respect when I'm on the field because these are players that I just watch on TV and I'm cheering for them. But then as they're my opponents, I'm like, okay, you are just another soccer player and we are sharing a field right now. Like, I can't just be,
Yeah.
wow, you're so great. It's like, no, I have to go challenge the ball and I have to go challenge you, even though, we had much different upbringings.
Yeah. And that so that different kind of upbringing, allowed you to stay sort of close to home when you went to college. Was that part of the a factor that played in for you in choosing UAlbany, or maybe talk to me a little bit about your college recruitment process?
So my college or my club was called New York Elite FC, and we didn't actually go to all the biggest showcases there were. We didn't That wasn't something that I think that was a big value for them. It was really just player development and not burning kids out. And I really
Hmm.
did appreciate that because to this day I still love playing. I don't think of it as a job. And I actually committed to Northeastern in Boston
Mm.
first, and that coach, Tracy, left for Maryland. So then I decommitted from Northeastern, and a lot of my class did too. A few of them still went and still had great careers, but a few of us did decommit. And then I think I got a call from UAlbany like a couple days later, and I was so close to them. My house was about 30 minutes away, if that. So then when I got a call from the coach and she offered me, my parents were like, yeah. And I was like, okay. So even though it was 30 minutes away, the college experience was really what I kind of wanted to make of it. Like if I wanted to go home
Yeah.
every weekend, I definitely could have. But there were months on end that I was like, I'm not coming home. Like I'm away at school, even though I'm not super far. Like I still want this to be my experience.
Yeah. So that choice to decommit from Northeastern, how much like because I find that curious in some players, they all look at college kind of from a different lens, right? And what they're really looking for. It sounds like to you that connection with that coach was a huge factor in what led you to choosing that program and to begin with. And maybe was it that there was so much uncertainty around whether there was going to be a new coach that you gelled with, or was there a new coach that you just thought, that's not really kind of where I want to go? Like maybe kind of talk to me about that decision a little bit.
Yeah. Tracy, her husband was actually the Harvard men's coach or the Harvard women's coach. So they were both in Boston together and they had a great dynamic and everything. And she and I, gelled like really well together. Like you were kind of saying, like personally, we were on the same page. Like she was around my height. She played my position. Like it seemed like we just had a lot in common and I really trusted her to be my coach and to kind of help me get to that next level. And there was some uncertainty about who the new coach was going to be. And also, Northeastern is a very prestigious school. And one of the things about the school that I was always unsure about, even when I committed, was they have this thing called co ops, which
Hmm.
is you have to have a job at, it was like at one point during your or as soon as you hit junior year or something like that, you had to have a job then moving forward, which then would interfere with like trainings and practice. And of course, I wanted to go to college like for my education to help me, later in life because eventually the ball is going to deflate. But I also really wanted to have my college experience to be at a school where I could thrive on the soccer field. So
Hmm.
I was a bit nervous, I think. I was mostly nervous, I would say, about Tracy leaving, which is why I decommitted.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that's an important point to note as well, because I think you were probably given that advice, or maybe you had seen players before you that like you understood a little bit what the athletic rigors of a Division 1, college athletics program would be, and then also combining that with an education program that's at a super high level, and then on a job as well. It's like, it's why sometimes I think it can be really hard for college athletes, and maybe it's not talked about enough, like just sometimes how much is on the plate of especially levels at that or athletes at that level, excuse me.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think you totally nailed it. Like, I think I, at the time, also being 17 at the time, I just felt like that was going to be a lot of pressure all the way around, like within my job, within my major, on the field, trying to gel with the girls, like also like being in Boston and like that type of city. There was just a lot, I think, to think about. And I guess knowing that I was 30 minutes away from home when I transferred to
Mm.
Albany maybe was a little bit more comforting to me at the time. So I don't know, but I mean, definitely just thankful for the opportunity that I did get at UAlbany, and my college career. I wouldn't change it for anything. So
Yeah. Yeah, and when you arrived at UAlbany, from everything that I can see, you had a ton of success kind of individually, but also on a team level as well.
yeah.
Two NCAA tournament appearances and stuff like that. Like, are those some of the highlights that you remember from your career in Albany, or what are some of the things that you really take away from those couple of years there?
Oh, I for sure take away the NCAA tournaments. That was just amazing, and I didn't even realize how uncommon it was for a lot of athletes to play at these amazing big competitive schools that don't even get conference championship rings, that don't get regular season like championships, and a lot of them that are so successful don't even get to go to the NCAA tournament. So I was so blessed and so happy that I got to have that experience. And then when I even transferred to the University of South Florida, we also got to go and we made a little bit more of a run, not too far. I think we got knocked out like the second round, but still, like, just very cool and very unfortunate though that a lot of athletes don't even get to experience that, because the NCAA tournament is definitely something I will always remember.
Yeah. And then so I kind of saw that part of the reason for transferring, or part of the events that unfolded that led you to kind of choosing USF, was you actually played against USF when you were at UAlbany in your junior season, right?
Yeah, we got beat pretty bad, 5-1, and I guess if you can't beat them, join them. So after that season, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try. And going to school in Tampa, and Denise Schulte Brown and her husband Chris Brown were so welcoming. And as soon as I got that email, I was like, it doesn't seem like a bad place to spend a fifth year.
Yeah. And like, was that, so that reason of kind of leaving UAlbany, was that just like you felt, all right, I think I need a new challenge? Because obviously we, as you mentioned, the transfer process for you wound up being pretty quick, but even that decision to go into the portal from the start, right? Was that just like, I think I've kind of maxed out my level here?
Yeah, I did love UAlbany, but I also wanted to get away, I think. So every summer, I also spent going to different states and playing on different summer teams. So I went to Tucson, Arizona, and then South Carolina. And I then was just like, I'm not scared to be farther away from home, and I'm not really
Hmm.
scared about like joining new teams. Like, I like the challenge. I like meeting new people. I like exploring. So when I kind of saw that USF was an opportunity and they had been consistently making it to the NCAA tournament, I was just so thrilled because I love, of course, making it to the NCAA
Yeah.
tournament. And this team was like really good. Like, they were ranked top 20, top 25 for a few continuous years. So I was
Hmm.
really up for the challenge, and I was excited to just train with these top players day in and day out.
Yeah. And you mentioned something before when you were talking about kind of your decision making behind Northeastern, right? You mentioned kind of like the pressure. And it sounds like for you, like in just kind of hearing you talk about your approach to the game, like it sounds like you have a pretty good kind of grasp of pressure and how it can be beneficial, but also not to, kind of overextend that upon yourself. Like, was some of that transition from UAlbany to USF where maybe you got a little bit more exposure to like, ooh, okay, this is a little bit more pressure filled environment. There's more pressure on me as a player. And maybe what that transition was really like and how you kind of grew more accustomed to that.
So yeah, I personally, I really do like pressure. I I don't want to have like that much time to think, especially when I'm on the field. Like, I just want to play. Like, whatever's flowing is flowing. And definitely, when I got to USF, it was a different adjustment. It was even a different level of physicality that I actually wasn't even ready for. One of the first things Denise said to me was, "You are not fit enough," and I was just like,
Wow.
"Okay, you know what? That's so lovely to hear, though, because." When it's so honest and it's so true. So I was like, that's so fixable though. So
Yeah.
I remember as soon as that season was canceled and we ended up having it in the spring, I had the rest of the fall to just grind and just try my absolute hardest to get fit. And then when I came back and my numbers were right where they needed to be, it was just like, okay, like I like these types of challenges and I like things, of course, that are fixable. So that was nice. That was definitely challenging though.
Yeah. Yeah, that is kind of like the beauty and the curse about being told like, okay, you need to get more fit. Like you said, it's like it's a very easy fix, right? Like, but at the
Right.
same time, it's a hard fix that's not always the most fun
Yeah.
fix, right? Like,
Right. Well, and it was, and she didn't even mean it in any type of negative way. It was honestly more of a wake up call. Like, the level that I was playing at U Albany was a bit slower than the
yeah,
level at USF. So she was like, by me getting fitter, like being able to run for longer, if I'm not worried about getting tired, I can make better decisions on the ball, which is just what she was getting at. And I just really appreciated that. I appreciate her, and I think that that's something I've really taken with me is like fitness. Like, if you're fit, then you really just get to focus on soccer. Then you don't have to worry about getting too tired and making silly like decisions because you are tired.
yeah, yeah. That's perfectly said. Like, because you mentioned it, it's the brain speed kind of has to raise that much more, and then when you deplete everything out of your legs, then it's like, well, neither one can really can
Yeah.
really work at the level that they need to now.
Yeah.
So after kind of, and as I'm sure you can attest to, like the experience to go to USF was probably amazing, but then also when it's met with like COVID and playing and then not playing and quarantine and all this stuff, like I'm sure that had to be such a whirlwind. Like with you knowing that you had sort of the goals that you did, how did those last 2 years sort of pan out in terms of like kind of figuring out what are the steps I'm going to take to go and achieve this dream?
Yeah. So, of course, it added another season, but honestly, I can only choose to look at it as a like amazing thing because I had more time to make better connections with the girls and grow a better chemistry on and off the field. So it only helped us, I think, translate it onto the field. And then we ended up having a really good season because we had more time together and more time to gel and kind of figure each other out. And it gave me more time to understand what the coaches were asking of me and try to get their trust on the field. And it really did help me out. But yeah, it was definitely tough though because I wasn't expecting to be in Tampa for a full year.
Hmm.
So of course that changes things with like scholarships and like future plans and like the
Yeah.
draft and all that. So it just extended the process a little bit, but I definitely wouldn't have changed anything about it though. I think that time was super necessary for us all to get to where we wanted to be during that season.
Yeah. So then how did that transpire then with, because I read kind of that was your goal to finish up in Tampa and then kind of enter the draft, and that was hopefully the route you were going to take to get to the professional ranks. Like or maybe even for those of us that don't know, if you could kind of talk a little bit about like what the draft process is sort of like, or maybe what your thoughts and kind of plans were with that.
So my goal, of course, was to play in the NWSL. It still is. I would love to get there one day. And after our season at my last season at USF, I entered the draft and I was not drafted. So, of course, I was discouraged, but also there were how many people? Like 200 people, other girls that entered the draft and were not picked. And it doesn't mean that you're not a talented soccer player. It doesn't mean
Mm,
anything. I mean, everybody enters the draft in different ways. Some go in with an agent, some don't. Some go in totally knowing what's going on, like what the deal is, and others don't. And not getting picked was disappointing, of course, but also there were so many other girls in the same position as me. And,
yeah.
I mean, of course, it takes like a little knock to you, but you got to just know that, okay, this wasn't my exact route. It doesn't mean you can't ever get into the league, but it just means you kind of got to go a different route. So I took it as maybe I needed more professional experience, and then they would get more of a look at me playing at higher levels against higher players. So that's kind of what I decided to do then, was go play overseas, and then hopefully when I'm ready, or if that is the path I'm supposed to take, then I can eventually get back there. But if not, I mean, playing in top division teams in Europe is definitely a really fun way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So how are you, while that kind of maybe draft goal process is happening, are you, speaking to lots of agents or speaking to clubs as well? Because I'm sure, many players, even if they know they're going to get drafted, like they're going to be one of the first picks, like they're having a lot of different conversations to try
Mhm.
and figure out what their next step is going to be. Like, what were some of those conversations that you were having, or maybe some of the ideas that you thought of places that you might wind up, whether the draft worked out or not?
So I didn't have an agent going into the draft. I was pretty behind on that. I didn't really understand how it worked. I didn't know really how early you could be talking to agents. And honestly, I just wasn't very proactive with it. I should have been, I think, doing a little bit more off of the field, like talking to my coaches more, like who should I be talking to, like who should I be working with. And I wasn't doing those things because I didn't really know. I was like, I figured, you just put your name in and see what happens. But
Yeah.
as somebody whose name wasn't as big in the NCAAs, I needed to be doing more to have my name exposed. And now looking back, I'm like, man, I should have done that. But also, I'm having a very fun and a great college or professional career. So, I mean, I feel like it all just works out in different ways. So,
Yeah, yeah, everything happens for a reason. I definitely believe that, especially when it comes to, a soccer career where e- even if you try and plan everything down to the T, it's not
right,
always going to quite work out like that.
right.
I was just speaking to a player recently who said that like one thing that she did was like tried to like reach out to tons of players, whether they had played in college or are now playing professionally, just to like get kind of advice or like, hey, do you have somebody that I could reach out to, an agent that you work with that you would recommend, things like that. You mentioned that a little bit, like maybe some of the things that you look back and kind of learn. But if there were a player that were to reach out to you that would is kind of in that stage, right, where they're finishing up college, is there anything that you feel like you've learned in the couple of years, like to really recommend to them, or really kind of be on the lookout for this when it comes to my next step is I want to be a professional?
Um, the advice I would give is just you really have to be your biggest advocate. Like, if you don't
Hmm.
believe in you and you don't put yourself out there in very vulnerable situations, like, it's really hard to gain respect and just gain exposure. So I would just say, like, put yourself out there as much as you can. And I mean, reaching out to people can never hurt, because I mean, the worst thing that happens is they don't respond or they say, no, I'm not interested. But if you didn't ask, you don't even get that rejection. So
Yeah.
just trying to put yourself out there as much as you can. And also just trust the process. Like, if something's not going your way, then try a different avenue. And even if it doesn't seem like that's going to be super beneficial, like there's always going to be positive outcomes in the decisions that you make.
Yeah. So what were the events like? Did that kind of lead to the Puerto Rico contract that you were on? Like maybe putting yourself out there and kind of talking to different people. Did that eventually lead to you kind of signing your first deal down there?
Yeah, so then after the draft happened, I was like, wow, I really need to start getting on this. Like if I do really want to play professionally, I need to either get an agent, I need somebody helping me because you're kind of in the dark. Like you don't know who to contact, you don't know who knows you, you don't really know what the deal is. So then I started working with Chris Brown and Denise Schulte Brown, and they were so open to helping. They have the best advice. They know everybody too.
Hmm.
So Chris Brown was telling me a lot about like there was a couple teams in Denmark, there was some other in Europe, and I guess I just wasn't really ready to make that jump right away. I think I was a little down and a little disappointed with how things ended up. So I was like, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to get to the level that I want to. So maybe I should just go somewhere that I would enjoy the scenery and enjoy the actual place. And you get paid to play soccer. So I was like, maybe I should just, um, go visit cool places that I really would want to see. And you get to get paid to play soccer. So I was like, doesn't seem like a bad gig to me. So I was like, Puerto Rico, I'm so down.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think you like kind of hit on an important point there that is one of the hard things about like this profession and this career that like it is very kind of emotionally like up and down, like you have this opportunity to go to USF and play at this high level and make these amazing connections, and then kind of it's like, like I wish that it eventually led into the pro career that I had always kind of envisioned, like right out of the gate and stuff. But now, like again, it's just those ups and downs, right? Puerto Rico, and then that kind of gave you that confidence. It seems like to be like, yeah, I do want to go to Europe. I am the
Yeah.
player that I know that I can be, and I can go and do it that route. Like, is that something that you've kind of grown fond, or not fond of, that's not probably the right word because it's such a roller coaster to try and hang on to, but is that something that you've sort of noticed in just doing a profession like this?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I was in Puerto Rico, and that was not all fun and games, although it might sound like it is.
Yeah.
My coach down there was like, his name was Sheck, and he said, we're doing 2 sessions a day every single day. And I don't care how hot it is, and we're going outside and we are working. And we did that. And of course, and we won the championship. We were great together. And it was definitely a lot of fun. I would go back to Puerto Rico in a heartbeat and go visit, but there was a lot of work there for sure. And yeah, I mean, definitely in this profession, you never really know.
Yeah. Was that, and
Yeah.
and this may be something that you've had experience with or maybe not either, like was that when you went down to Puerto Rico, was that kind of already like contracts laid out guaranteed, or was there a trial process that went along with that, or were there even trials that you went on before kind of landing in Puerto Rico? Because I know that can be another thing that is, again, like that roller coaster, that kind of stressful period of time for a lot of players.
Right. So actually, yeah, before I even went to Puerto Rico, I got an email from Gotham, and I got an email from Louisville, and they both said like, will you come to our tryouts? And
Hmm.
we would love to watch you play and everything. And I went there, and I wasn't picked up by either of those teams, but I was like, that's interesting though that I like received this, like I'm even on this email chain. So that gave me like a little bit of hope there. So, um, but then after that, and I didn't make those teams, I um, got a contract from Puerto Rico, and then I went down there. There was no on trial because that coach knew Chris Brown, and then Chris
Hmm.
Brown kind of helped me get that contract there.
Yeah. That, and I bring that up because, and I would love to hear kind of your thoughts on it as well, but like I think it's hard to describe to people like what a trial is really like when
Yeah.
when they don't know kind of what athletics is. And it's like, imagine, going to a job interview, but they ask you to just like go in and do the job. Like, obviously you're already trained on
Yeah.
it, but just like
No,
go in and do the
exactly.
job, and we're going to watch you. And it's not really just about can you do the job, it's also like can you do it and like better than these other people that we already kind of
Yeah.
have.
No,
And the
exactly.
other people are watching you and saying, I don't want that person to get the job. Like, it's the the dynamics of it, I think, are, people can conceptualize it because they know sports are competitive, but they don't really know what it's like until you're
Right.
actually in it and doing it.
No. That is actually so true. That's exactly what it's like. And what another thing I didn't know about, of course, when I went to these tryouts, the coaches were already speaking to some of the girls, I guess, that had agents and stuff, and I didn't have an agent. So I think I was just like another name on the list. But of course, when you go there, I think that they are specifically looking at certain girls that they sent this email out to. And it really is like when you go to these tryouts, you're like, wow, you can think to yourself, like, wow, I'm one of the best ones here. And it's like, okay, but these girls that you're playing against aren't even the girls that you're actually competing against. The girls you're actually competing against aren't even here. So you're just
Yeah.
like, okay, I might be better than these girls, but this doesn't mean too much because I still have to be better than a girl that's not even here. So it is hard too because you can leave those things feeling absolutely great about how you played and it still might not be enough.
Yeah. And what's the feeling like just kind of like day to day? I have to imagine that really kind of fluctuates. Like, because like you said, there's that emotion of, I had a really good day today and I felt like I was one of the best players on the field, but also like there's so much still that's kind of left to do in order for me to get in front of the coaches when I'm actually with the team, that they've already selected. Like, what is that just like, or maybe even like that first day, like what are your emotions kind of like first day of that tryout?
It's for me too when I would think about that, I was thinking more that okay, so you guys sent me an email, so you've
Mm,
clearly, I would hope at least you've seen me play somewhat. So you're like, okay, she's here because she kind of knows how to touch a ball. But then also, I feel like those people at the tryouts are also looking to see you as a person and see
yeah,
how you talk to other people and see if you're a leader or if you're just bossy, if you're cocky or if you're confident, like how you gel with other people. And are you like professional in the way that after the session's over, you're going to go introduce yourself? So I was when I would go to those tryouts, I would try to kind of show that I am capable of being the whole package. And that was really hard too, because again, you have to put yourself in very uncomfortable situations. Like, oh, when this is over, 13 girls are going up to the coach being like, hi, I'm so and so. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to say that's different than her? And I don't want to sound like an idiot, but I also want you to remember my face after this. So
yeah,
it was definitely tricky going into those situations.
yeah. And because you spoke to it before, like there is that element of you have to kind of put yourself out there and put yourself in uncomfortable situations to get the rewards that you want. Because like we meant, like I said with the job interview, they're kind of evaluating all the different things. Yes, they want to know, can you do the job, but also they want to know, like, how are you going to interact with your coworkers? Are you going to be a person that it's fun to show up and work with them every day? Because like, we've all had teammates like that in the past where it's like, sure, they're great players, but man, they are not fun to be
Yeah.
around. They are not fun to
Totally.
play with. Like, and that all kind of factors into it too.
Right. Oh my gosh, for sure. Yeah. Because you can't just have a team of a bunch of superstars. You need a team of a bunch of people that gel and work really well together. You need somebody that can finish. You need somebody that's just a workhorse on the field. You need a leader. Like a team is made up of a lot more than just a bunch of superstars that think they can dribble everybody. So yeah, you really got to
Yeah.
show like if I can't bring this to the table, but I can really bring this, which will also enhance this person's performance. So yeah.
Did that Puerto Rico team kind of encapsulate that idea? Like, or was it just like the amount of work that your team put in was far and away kind of what anybody else was going to be able to offer, doing double sessions a day, or was it really like that was just a really cohesive, like well-balanced team?
That team there was just a lot of very skilled players and a lot of players that were just overall very dedicated to working hard. In the reality of it, Puerto Rico Soul is like excellent at recruiting. Our team just, we had a lot of girls fresh out of college, and unfortunately, the other Puerto Rican teams don't exactly have the resources, I
Hmm.
guess, that Puerto Rico Soul has had. So as a group, we all just understood soccer very well. We did gel really well together, and the work definitely helped keep us very fit. Of course, I think we still could have won the whole conference, the whole championship just with one training session a day. But
Yeah.
I mean, he kept us in shape, so there you go.
Exactly. There's not going to be any more coaches that are saying, I think you need to get your
Yeah,
fitness up after the Puerto Rico
yeah,
experience.
literally. I was like, wow.
Yeah. So was there a kind of thought of maybe returning to Puerto Rico for another season, or did you feel like that was my first step, but now it's time to take the second step in my career?
Um, I really did love Puerto Rico, and I would have loved to go back there. I loved all the people there. I love the place, but it was kind of like a UAlbany feeling after Puerto Rico Soul. I was
Okay.
like, I really want to challenge myself and see if I am capable of playing at a higher level, and I won't know unless I put myself out there and go give it a shot. So, yeah, it was kind of like a goodbye once that season was over.
Yeah. And so how did the process come about of, moving over to Albania? And forgive me, can you pronounce the name of your club? I think you said it before, but I
Vlasnia.
Bosnia. Okay. Because I saw
Maybe.
the double L's in the beginning and I'm like, is
Oh,
it
it's okay.
really
I didn't
just
know either. I didn't know either at first. Yeah. So after Puerto Rico Soul, I was like, okay, I'm actually gonna give the whole professional ride like my best shot. Like I'm gonna put myself in uncomfortable situations, talk to who I need to talk to, and I don't have the connections and the resources on my own. So that's when, after I spoke with my parents, I was like, I think it is time to get an agent, someone who really knows the ins and outs of talking to teams and negotiating and all that. So I signed with Narrow Pathway Management, and I work with a man named Jason right now, and he's great. And I signed with him, and 3 days later, he came back with an offer to play in Champions League. The club was Bosnia in Albania, and I had no idea where Albania was. None of my family did. It is above Greece and below Kosovo and Montenegro, for anyone who doesn't know. And um, when you actually Google it, it is a beautiful country, and it does not get the credit it deserves for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then after I was given that contract, after 3 days of signing with this agent, and I got to play in Champions League, and I was told that they had a really good shot of going to the knockout round. So I was like, of course, I would love to see if I can help this team get to that next stage in Champions League.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you mentioned that too, like that you kind of didn't even know exactly where like Albania is on a map, right? Because I think like that's such a common theme of professionals that are just kind of in that early stage where they're trying to get their foot in the door, and it's like, I don't care like what the opportunity is, like if there's an opportunity for me to play at a high level, like boom, I'm gonna take it. And there, I'm sure like your family, does your family or friends ever kind of look at that like, wow, like that's such a crazy thing. Like that's always the thing that I get when I
Yeah,
tell people that I'm moving. They're like, that's so crazy that you would just move
yeah,
across the world. And it's like, I love talking. This is why I love doing this. I love talking to players because it's like when you say something like that, I'm going to move to Albania or I'm going to move here, there. players, like, they just get it because it's for the
Right.
game, it's for
You're not
soccer.
even fazed by it.
Yeah. Like, there's almost not if you were to tell another player, like, there's not really a country out there that you could say and they'd be like, "Oh, wow, that's incredible." Like,
Right.
it's like, "Oh, you got opportunity there? Okay, that makes sense."
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, oh, good luck. I'd love to watch it. Send me a link. Yeah, no, I would have never gone to Albania if I didn't have a contract there. I would have never seen that country. So that was definitely very interesting. And of course, I can't help but to be skeptical of it too, because none of my favorite teams played in Albania. So I was like, I don't know what the level of soccer is like here, but
Yeah.
hearing that they're in Champions League and when we did make it to the knockout round, like that is a core memory of mine in a country I never thought I would be in. So that was just a
Yeah.
really crazy and cool experience.
Absolutely. And you mentioned too that it's a kind of, because I have heard that before about Albania, that it's kind of like a little hidden gem. Like, I know, I think I
Yeah.
mentioned this a couple episodes ago, but a friend of mine who plays in Germany, like when he had time in the off season, he was going to Albania. Like, and it wouldn't be one that you would normally think of as a place
No.
in Europe, like a top destination. But apparently, it's kind of one of the best kept secrets.
Yeah. Some people there would describe it as like a cheaper Greece almost.
Okay.
Um, yeah, they have some really pretty um, scenery there. It was amazing. It was beautiful. I wish I had more off time, I guess, to see more of the country. But of course, you do have to remember you are kind of there on like a really long business trip. So
Yeah.
much as I would have loved to gone hiking and gone on these 3 hour drives and stuff, you know, I have to wake up the next morning and go train. So that wasn't really going to be my best bet.
Yeah, that makes sense. What was the adjustment like, maybe kind of football wise? Was it a huge difference in the game, like from college and Puerto Rico? What were some of the things that you noticed there?
So the first thing I noticed when I got to Albania is um, they weren't nearly as physical as it is in the United States.
Mm,
I also will say I wasn't really used to the whole like faking injury things. You know, when, you know,
yep.
better players, like I personally, I just, I don't even know how to do that. Like, I don't know. So, you know, we'll be even training and, you know, they'll fall down and be like, oh my God. And I'm just like, wait, was that real? Is it not real? I was like, I don't even understand what that is. Then I'm like,
Yeah.
girls in the US, I feel like we clobber each other sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
so the physicality of it was different. Like, they're all very athletic, of course, and very technical, but the physicality was definitely different. They're definitely more like, I'm gonna actually take the ball from you. I'm not gonna step into you first. So that was a little bit different. Yeah.
And is there any culture shock, whether it be on the field or off the field, like, now kind of adjusting to new languages being spoken all around you and, just again, a whole new kind of culture that you are living in and adjusting to?
Yeah, definitely. I think I was a bit culture shocked in the beginning because uh, a lot of things that I was not used to seeing, like the markets on the side of the street with the chickens hanging off, you know, bicycle handlebars. I was like, Albania has more stray dogs than we have people in this country. There were
Oh my
stray dogs
gosh.
I loved. But the thing is, though, is I feel like the people in Albania don't, they're so accustomed to it. They're just like, whatever, it's a dog. And then
Yeah.
you have the Americans that are like, oh my God, you know,
I want all
everywhere.
the dogs.
And they're like, stop petting the stray dogs. And we were like, we just want to bring them all home. So, yeah, little different things like that. And not having a car. So walking everywhere, which I really enjoyed too. That was really nice. Not when it was freezing or raining, but getting
Yeah.
to walk around too was really nice, uh, for sure.
And then I think we spoke about it a little bit kind of over the course of the conversation here, but making it into that, that knockout round portion of the Champions League. And now, like, you're playing against this giants, so to speak, right? Like, the
Yeah.
the group was right, Real Madrid, PSG, and Chelsea, which is just absolutely loaded from top to bottom. Like, I mean, just even like when you get that kind of draw and you figure out what your schedule is going to be,
Mhm.
what's kind of going through your head?
Well, they actually did record us when we got the draw, and we're all just sitting there, and you just see all of us just dying laughing. We're like, you know what? If we're gonna play in the knockout round and we get to go to the stadiums, Real Madrid, PSG, and Chelsea, like, you know what?
Yeah.
Okay. Things where it was like, you really gotta just make the most of it,
Yeah.
and you gotta just, I don't know, do what you can with what you got. Cause I mean, those girls are just unbelievably talented. They've been playing together for years. Like, they are a different animal. And that was crazy. And our team was like, we have to at least try to minimize the damage. So unfortunately, every single game we had to sit back. And as an
Mm.
attacking player, I don't personally enjoy sitting back. So I was like, I want to run at these people. And you really can't. Cause I mean, once I go out of position, then a lot of people are out of position. So yeah, it was definitely tricky and required a lot of organization and communication on all ends.
Yeah. And I have to imagine, like you said, the stadiums in Chelsea and Paris and Madrid are a little bit different than back to your days playing in the Albany football stadium.
A little. There was no football line, so I was a little thrown off, but it was okay. No, oh my gosh, the facilities were beautiful. Everybody there that was working within the facilities was so sweet to us. Um, yeah, that was a dream, and thank God we got to go and train on the field a
Yeah.
day or so early, so you could kind of get it out of your system. Take your pictures, because then when it comes time for game day, you're like, okay, like I have to act like I belong on this field, and I have to believe I do, because these really are my competitors. I'm not watching Real Madrid play, like I have to go up against them. So
Yeah. Kind of a follow-up to that, like is there anything that you feel like you've kind of learned in your professional career thus far, like real differences in between the way you kind of approached the game when you were a college athlete, where there were still lots of stakes and pressure, right? Everybody wants to win, but it switches to kind of a new just atmosphere when you are a professional and right, people are getting paid for this, and there's motivations from a lot of different parties that want to see a team succeed or stay up, or things like that. Like, is there anything that you've kind of realized, like you've had to approach the game a little bit differently, maybe from on the field or off the field?
yeah, for sure. The amount of pressure, I think our entire team and even the whole organization of Veloznia was feeling, because you make it to that round, and that's so amazing. It's a crazy accomplishment, but it's also like the pressure was a different type of pressure, because you have no expectations. Like our entire team, it was like, we don't expect you guys to beat Chelsea, but it was also like, we do expect you to at least hold up a decent game, in the sense that like you cannot get destroyed. Like
Yeah.
making it here, like, you know what I mean? You have to prove that you belong on the field. So it was almost like such an underdog mentality, and such a, we got to fight, but in a different way. Not like, oh, we're going to go right down their throats every time, but in a, you have to defend your heart out. So it was much different than in college, of course, because in college, every single game was just an absolute battle. And in every game I played in Champions League, I would say it was such a mental battle to always be
Mm.
tracking my runners and always make sure I'm shifting and I'm talking to everybody that doesn't even speak the same language as me. So yeah, it was very different, but I wouldn't give it up for the world. It was very fun.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's also kind of in your thinking as well, like how you said, I want to go over to Europe and build up my resume, sort of like build up my career a little bit. Whether that means I keep playing in Europe, or to show the the NWSL that, like, here's what I'm able to do. Like, I think I should deserve to play at this level. Like, I'm sure there also has to be like kind of that mindset of your own of like, I need to show that I don't look like a fish out of water. And when I'm
Mhm.
on these pitches, like with these players, like that these are players that I can compete with and, battle with to, show for maybe a next contract or for a next team that might take a look at me like, hey, look what I can do. And I've done it against some of the best in the world.
Yeah. So, of course, in those games, like, you have to do what's best for the team, which is just like a lot of defending and staying compact. But as an attacking player, just like you said, like, in order for me to get another contract somewhere, I need to show that I can, when I do get the ball, like, I am calm and I am like collected and I can make good decisions even when I am up against the best players. So in those games, I would touch the ball maybe 4, 5 times total, or
Yeah.
maybe in just a half. So it wasn't a lot, but I had to make the most of what I did with that. So, it was definitely different. But yeah, I mean, at the end of it, I was like, I somehow have to make a highlight tape out of this. So I need to connect some passes here, and I
Yeah.
need the name of the team up in that corner. So,
Absolutely. So what's
yeah.
what's that kind of process like now? Like now that season is now over, we're in kind of off season right now, and like you said, you have this resume to kind of back things up a little bit. What are some of the thoughts, like one of maybe the conversations you're having with your agent, or where do you feel like next steps might be for you?
Yeah, so I actually was just on the phone with him today, and um, just talking about again, like, what's next, whether it's best for me to go over to Europe, whether it's better for me to try to get into a preseason with an NWSL team. Like, it's really just trying to, same thing, just trying to get my name out to as many different clubs and teams as I would like, and just kind of seeing what the best fit would be for me, what team is looking for, a midfielder, I guess, and just kind of seeing where I would fit in best.
Mm. And is there anything that you already have started to look at outward towards your career of like, I know we already mentioned like NWSL is one that we kind of want to put on the checklist, right? But are there other things that you think like these are things that I am looking to achieve in my career on the field?
Like, I would say I'm just looking to, play as long as I am enjoying it, and just
Mm.
play for as long as I really can, because physically, like, I am doing like really well right now, and achievement wise, I think I just really want to play as long as I enjoy it. I don't want it to ever feel like it's a job or it's forced. And I really do love it right now. So it is just nice that, just like you said, like growing up from somewhere in Clifton Park, like those big names that were in high school, some make it to pro. So the fact that, you even get this privilege too of getting to play your sport as your job, like, it's just such a privilege. So it really is just an achievement in itself. So I definitely do not want to take just any opportunity I get for granted, of course.
Yeah. Do you ever kind of think about that now, in like how there was players in your kind of youth career growing up, like, right, you said you got to meet Abby Wambach and that was like
Mhm.
an inspiration. Like, do you ever kind of think about that now, like there may be players who, Shen players coming up or New York Elite players coming up that like see like, oh wow, there's this player who was right where I was and is now, doing this and that. Like, is that ever something that really crosses your mind or not so much?
No. Honestly, so weird to me. Like, that would just be so weird. Because, like, I don't know, I feel like you can't even like think of yourself as that. Like, I don't know, I definitely never have. Just because, I don't know. Because you're just like, oh, well, I'm me. Like, you're you. You're like, whatever. You're like, yeah, I played there when I was younger.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that definitely makes sense. I mean, I would dare to say I bet you there's at least one or two players that even if they were like, younger on the team that they probably like,
Yeah.
cuz it's true, like you're playing against, like we said, you're playing against some of the biggest names like in the world.
Right.
Like that has to take notice, especially like a small
Absolutely.
soccer community like this, like that we grew up in where it's not like we're just pumping out players left and right that are going on to
Right.
play high Division 1 or high pro. So it's definitely something that people look up to, and the Capital Region is repping you, and they're proud.
Well, you too.
I appreciate that. I appreciate
Yes,
that.
you know.
So it sounds like, and I love that you mentioned that in the beginning too, like that the game is still fun, and it always, it gives you that same kind of joy, like when you go out and get to do it now, even though that it is a job, but it doesn't feel like a job. And I think you kind of mentioned, is that where you're looking at as sort of your barometer of like, I'll know when, maybe I want to move on to something else. I'll know that when, it doesn't quite feel that fun to me, right? When it doesn't feel like that
Right.
joy.
Yeah, for sure. I, to be honest though, I don't even know if I'm ever going to get to that point. Like, my dad is somebody who still plays soccer to this day. I just actually
Yeah.
watched him go play indoor soccer the other day, and he's just having so much fun with it. So I do think, and you're probably the same way. You're like, okay, even when I am 50, years old, like, I'm still going to go play in some indoor leagues. Like, I still got it for sure. So I don't think it's ever going to be something I'm going to totally let go of my life, but yeah, with the day that I do retire from professional football will be for sure a sad one. I will be
Yeah.
very sad.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think even like, a player who actually recently retired, who I had on the show, like, said that he was like, I got the best piece of advice that was like, no matter how ready you are for it, or no matter like when it comes, you're always going to be sad. Like, and I think
Yeah.
that's the perfect way to put it, because it's like, even if you just know like it's time to do something different, there's no way, like, you've dedicated so
Yeah,
much time, like so
right.
many training sessions and everything, and it's something that you love so much, to say that you would just be like completely at peace with your decision. I don't know if that's ever possible.
Yeah, no. I think no. I also could see myself being the person that I'm like, okay, it's time to retire, and then pull like a Heather O'Reilly and be like, okay, so I'm back. Just be like, I actually couldn't go through with that decision. Yeah. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
mean, we'll find out when the time comes.
yeah, you see a ton of athletes do that. So, and now I can
Yeah.
even understand that much more. They're coming back
Yeah.
and retiring, they're coming back. But I appreciate so much you taking some time out of an off season that I'm sure is busy with, conversations with the agent, and training, and working out and getting ready for the next opportunity. Looking forward to see kind of where you land next, and what's in the future for your career. But yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. And good luck with your career too and your podcast. It's so fun. Thank you so much for having me.
That's going to do it for the Meghan Cavanaugh edition of the In the 11 podcast. I want to thank her once again for sharing her time, sharing her story with all of us. I want to thank you guys out there who have continued to listen on a week in and week out basis. We cannot do this without you, and I know I say that often, but it really is true. Without the support of all of you guys, pushing the socials and sharing the podcast, and just listening, right? Even you taking the time out of your day to click on one of my episodes and spend 45 minutes, an hour with me, it is never lost on me, and I appreciate that. Whether 10 people listen to the podcast or 10,000 people listen to the podcast, it's always something that I value very much. So thank you all of you out there who are listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.